So welcome to our long play review for The Division 2. It's been out 3-4 weeks now, and we've been taking our time with it. We normally do these long play reviews as more of a kind of podcasty kind of discussion about a game and what we've been doing with it, or how we feel about it after a long time with it. Normally try to reserve these for when we've actually finished a game, but it's now been, as I say, 4 weeks or so since The Division 2 came out, and it's something I think I'm really struggling to get a handle on because of how meaty this game is. I'm joined today by Kelly.
Hello.
And Kelly, we've both kind of been playing The Division 2. We've had a few friends along on the way with us. I say it's been out 3 or 4 weeks now. When did it come out? I think you've got
that's right. It came out on the 15th of March, so we're just shy of a month.
Jesus.
Having it ourselves. Obviously we've got it on the PlayStation 4. You can also get it on the PC and Xbox One. In terms of price, while we're at it, you can currently get it for about £35 to £40.
Yeah, it's a full retail game, but after a month it's come down a little bit in price, and not as much as Anthem.
No, you can get Anthem pretty cheap now.
To be fair, Anthem's a little bit older as well, but I don't think that's the main reason.
You could get Anthem pretty cheap on launch date, so.
Yeah, but yeah, the Division 2, and it's funny this is actually coming off the back of Anthem because it's another loot shooter, third person. Obviously building on the Division 1, which came out a few years ago. We also played on that. I think it's safe to say that we both really enjoyed the Division. We played through the campaign, enjoyed, 15-20 hours worth of gameplay, and then put it down and never picked it back up again.
Yeah, I think with any game, it's so much better when you've got someone to play with.
Yeah, I think what Ubisoft were hoping to go for, all these loot shooters seem to try and go for like that long term. They want this to be the only game you're playing, and they want you to keep coming back. And the Division, when it launched, definitely wasn't that. It had problems, it had shortcomings, but I think it's again fair to say that it built upon a lot of that over the course of its life. There was lots of DLCs which added new and interesting things. They patched it, they built upon it. You know, it became a fairly solid game as a service type thing. And right off the bat, Division 2 pretty much does what no other loot shooter in the recent time seems to have done, in that it's built upon the successes of its original and carried those forward from day one. This isn't a Destiny situation where we're going to have to wait for another year for it to sort its shit out. It seems like a fully featured game in its own right, and I think right off the bat it's fair to say that I think this is a better game than the first Division.
There's definitely a lot of things to do from day one. It's a shame that we didn't go back to the Division, the first one, after they fixed a lot of things, because we did have a good time. We got to the end and it sort of petered out a little bit.
Yeah, completely. I think we're both only one trophy away from platinuming
yep.
it, which we'll never get at this point.
But yeah, the Division 2, there's so much to do all the time. They've definitely learnt the lessons from the first game, as you were saying. And it seems to be a better game for it, this second one.
Yeah, and I think it's worth saying that I mentioned before, we normally try to do these after we finish the game. We have not finished this game yet. The general structure is you go in at level 1 and you do missions, you level up, you get more gear and all the rest of it, and when you hit level 30, this game shifts. You do level 30, you complete the main campaign, and you do the strongholds, which are effectively the dungeons, or the strikes for anyone who's played Destiny, and then the game it basically kicks into endgame mode and the game changes. And we're not at that point yet. I've checked as of yesterday, we've got 30 hours in this game. I've maybe got a little bit more time than you. I'm a few levels ahead, but not in anything huge. And we've still got a quarter of the map to do. I haven't done any strongholds yet, but I hear they're good.
Yeah, so neither of us are level 30, so we've got the whole end game. We've not even touched yet.
Yeah, and what this is very much a part one of this long play review. It's from the perspective of having spent a month in this game. What's our current thoughts on it, and do we recommend it? So at its core, The Division is a tried and true sequel. We said before, it builds upon the successes of the first game. It's a third-person action shooter where you go around killing swathes of enemies and picking up gear from them. It's got kind of two systems, I suppose. It's got the gear that matters in terms of points. It's your your backpacks. I always think it's weird this, because Destiny, obviously you're equipping armor and other like traditional RPG things. In this, it's like, oh, I've got a new pair of gloves. Oh, I suppose you wear gloves in Destiny as well. You got a backpack.
I've got some knee pads.
Yeah, it's weird. It doesn't mean like it's no different to wearing boots or something in Warcraft, I suppose. But it feels weird. But it's generally okay. And there's definitely a lot of visual variety in the gear and things like that. You know, you pick up weapons. There's a lot of variety of weapons. You've got sniper rifles, marksman rifles, which are kind of a hybrid between a sniper and an assault rifle. Assault rifles being another kind. Heavy machine guns, LMGs. Shotguns, things like that, and it feels like there's always at least 2 or 3 archetypes for every weapon. So with the LMGs, there's the big, heavy, belt-fed beasts which have clips of 100 rounds and just spray enemies down. And then you've got the kind of the alternate LMG, which are effectively just heavy assault rifles. They're all kind of based on assault rifles. Like there's like a modified AK-47 type thing, which is just a big one with a big clip, but it's not as big as the belt-fed ones. And you know, there's a lot going on. So there's lots of different play styles, and I think generally speaking, it's pretty good, the gameplay.
Yeah, it's pretty easy to play. You can definitely sit back, play, not really think about it too much. It's an easy game to play.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. It's very, calling it mindless is probably very derogatory, but it is a little bit of a mindless game. The guns feel very, very good to shoot, but rarely am I thinking too much about the shooting. It's kind of just, it's an Ubisoft open world game. It just happens to be one that you can play with friends. It's basically you know, the gameplay at its core is very functional. It's very good. The guns all feel really fun. You've got abilities as well, which are called your platforms in this game. So you know, you had them in the first game. I think in the first game, I could be wrong, but originally at least, I don't know if they changed this, but you could only equip 1.
I think so.
In this one you can equip 2, which gives you a bit more build diversity. There's a lot more options. So there are 8 platforms, being things like a shield, like a riot shield you can whip out, a drone that you can summon, a turret, like you can throw a little briefcase you throw out and it unfolds into a turret, a gas grenade launcher, and you can, each one of these 8 platforms has got at least 3 to 5 variants. So the gas launcher is called the chem launcher. It can do things like the baseline one, the original one, is it fires a healing grenade out, and you can either throw it on yourself or throw it at a friend and heal them. There's one that basically you fire it and it unleashes a cloud of flammable gas. So you fire it, the flammable gas fills an area, you shoot it, it explodes and kills everybody. There's one that unleashes a cloud of pink smoke that eats armor from enemies, making them easier to kill. And I think there's another variant, but I can't remember what it is off the top of my head. But there's a lot of build diversity. So yeah, you know, the core gameplay is varied. There's a lot of room for build diversity. When you're playing with friends, it's even better because you can all equip different loadouts for different situations. Me and you tend to have similar guns, I think. We both use LMGs and assault rifles and SMGs and things like that.
Yeah, neither of us, I don't think, are very good with the sniper rifles or the marksman rifle type weapons.
But Pete, who we've been playing with, he's been hanging back with his little marksman rifle and loving it. I don't get on with them, but he seems to like them, so fair enough, you know, all power to him. But yeah, you go around the map fighting endless enemies and clearing off activities along the map, and the activities are fucking endless. I mean, you've got the main missions which drive the story forward, and they're usually big set pieces. You've got little side missions that usually award you bonuses. There's a litany of shade tech caches, which are like basically just like geocaches. You've got to go and find them, and they give you a shade tech point, which are things you can invest in the different variety of the platforms I told you about before, or perks, which are basically passive bonuses you unlock, which they're not the most exciting things in the world. It's like carry an extra grenade, and oh great, it's fine. They're hardly exciting though, but they're fine. There's loads of random events, which are usually kind of question marks on the map, but they kind of vary from things like one of the factions is going to publicly execute some civilians and you got to stop it. They've got hostages, you got to rescue them.
Yep, you've got supply drops, so it could be that you're helping the friendlies take take hold of what's in those supply crates and stop enemies from getting them.
They're quite good actually because they're quite dynamic. You actually see the supplies drop from the sky, enemies come in, and they've got to unlock them. You've got to unlock them as well, and it's kind of like a time thing, and you've got to work together to cover each other while you unlock them before the enemies do. They're quite good.
Yeah, so there might be 3 crates that drop. You maybe pick up 1 or 2. The enemies get 1, but you'd still successfully, as such, win that scenario.
Yeah, and there's loads of random events that happen. There's checkpoints which you are held by enemies, and you can take them on. It spawns little bosses when you're wiping waves out, and then you've got to defend them against kind of a wave that's trying to retake them. You'll summon friendly NPCs to help you with them, and basically as you kind of taking these checkpoints across different areas and doing these random events, you're slowly kind of peeling back the control the different factions have of the area, and your civilian allies start to take control. So very much the crux of the story is DC is in shambles. You're a division agent, and you get sent in to retake the city and re-establish control because they're not having a good time of it. And that's kind of what the campaign is. It's definitely what I'm getting a feeling of. The overarching story of the Division does not seem to be moving anywhere as I'm going through the campaign. I feel like that's probably going to come in this end game section that they seem to have built as almost a separate game in its own right.
Yeah, I think there doesn't seem to be too much story so far. It feels like, well, hopefully it will come later.
Yeah, I'd go so far as to say the story is bad because it's kind of, it doesn't say anything. I think that I think originally we said this is a better game than the Division 1.
Yeah.
But one of the things I would say is that the world building and the storytelling is far worse. The Division 1, the best part of it was the setting. It was really good, it was interesting. You could go around and gather echoes, which are kind of digital recreations of what's happened, and they used to feed into missions, and there was little side stories that would follow across different echoes, and there was phones you could find and listen to voicemail messages that would tell like quite dark and interesting stories around the citizens and the people that were in New York when everything happened. Here it feels a little bit more disjointed.
Yeah, it was definitely easier to follow in the first game. You recognise, so you have these collectibles as such called echoes, so you go to a certain area and it gives you a visualisation of something that happened there in the past. For those, you used to recognise some of the people within those echoes. Not so much in the Division 2. It seems to be these extra collectibles are sort of added on just without too much thought.
Yeah, it felt like, it really feels like they just had, where the first one was very much built around the setting, this one feels like, oh shit, we've got to have a city that's desolate and destroyed for a similar reason. Just shoehorn all this shit in, where it doesn't feel as organic, it doesn't feel as well told, it feels a lot more disjointed. And I think that goes so far as into the factions as well, so like, maybe I just haven't got far enough, but in the first game you have, and I can't remember the names because it's been a few years, but you basically had the street thugs, you had the military guys, and then you had kind of like the flamethrower guys, the outcasts. I remember what they were called. And the outcasts, for example, they were led by a former, was it New York sanitation? Oh, it's not the outcasts, sorry, it's the cleaners. The outcasts are the one in this game. Jesus. Which goes, I would just say as well, the factions do map on to the original, like almost one for one, really. Have you got a list of the...
I'm trying to find a list, but it seems to be mixing the Division 1 and Division 2
yeah.
together.
But what is it? The cleaners, the rioters, the last man battalion, the rikers, the hunters. So there maybe was even more factions. Yeah. So yeah, because there was like the street thugs, the prisoners, which were the rikers. The last man battalion was the military one. Yeah, and the cleaners were the flamethrower guy. So like yeah, but the factions felt a lot more fleshed out. Here you've got like, so you had the rioters. Is it the rioters? Yeah, the rioters who were just street thugs. Here you've got the hyenas, and again they're just street thugs. Nothing too deep for them. That's about it. You had the cleaners in the first game, which were the flamethrower guys, and in this one you've got the outcasts. Now, the cleaners were led by a former, was it like city sanitation engineer whose family or some... He had an opinion that the government didn't fight the infection of the dollar flu, which is at the core of all this, That caused all the devastation, everything, well enough so he and his guys are going to burn it out basically, and take a really hard line on the infection, and anyone who's not part of them is infected. They're kind of crazy, but at least they've got some kind of motivation. Here the Outcasts are just kind of crazy flamethrower guys. I don't really understand their motivation as such. Maybe I'm just not paying attention, but yeah, the world building's definitely not as interesting here. They're just kind of enemies to fight, and I suppose what is better about these factions is they're far more diverse. The troop diversity is a lot bigger in this one. You know, you start off fighting guys with guns, but even early on when you're fighting the hyenas, because they're the first faction you fight, they've got guys who use kind of Uzis and hold them sideways. That's how you know the street thugs. But you've also got guys who will they basically pop pills and get all like hyped up. And then just charge you with police batons and just try to bat the shit out of you, and that kind of starts as you level up. The diversity of enemies starts to get even greater, and they kind of develop into a subset of guys with the police batons with dustbin lids as shields, and they're a bit more defensive. Later in the game, there's guys on the hyenas. There's guys with bows and arrows that are very stealthy, and they try to sneak around you and don't try to engage you directly. Which is interesting, and I think as well that plays into the fact that while the factions aren't as thematically interesting as in the first game, they're more diverse, and they are a lot fucking cleverer and more aggressive.
They're definitely tough to take on yourself, so it's a thing where we're enjoying it because we're playing together, and it does have the social aspect, so you can call in for help as well. But I found when I've done that before, no one joins. But similarly, I haven't joined anyone else.
That is an interesting system though, where you can, if you're having a spot bother, you can literally call for help and put a call out for any other players online. It's very well implemented. It just nobody uses it. It's an interesting system that no one's taken advantage of, and I think that stretches into co-op altogether in this game. I think if we didn't have friends playing it directly, I find it quite hard to play with others.
Yeah.
And it's definitely a game better with others.
Yeah, I think the one time we do play with others is during missions. So at the start of missions you can matchmake, and that is quite successful, that people do join missions, but in other world activities it's quite tricky to get other people to join.
Yeah, no one really talks, nobody's on the mic. They tend to do the mission with you, and then when the mission ends they tend to leave and back into their own game to go on the merry way, and that's about it. Maybe that changes when everyone's level 30 in the end game because it's more freeform, I don't know, but it's definitely a game you want friends with. I've played about probably 5 hours of my 30 by myself, and it's fine, but it's not exactly riveting either. It's not hard to recommend, but it's definitely a much better game with friends. The game lends itself to it. The levels are always designed so that you can flank and go down different routes, and it just starts coming into its own when you've got somebody to play with. I mean, me and you play a lot together. It's always better having at least a third, if not a fourth person in, because it just opens up those squad tactics even more. It also seems, I don't know whether this is the case, but it feels like it spawns in a lot more enemies as well, or at least a lot more hard enemies.
What, when you're together?
Yeah, when you've got more people, and it just makes for better fights.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, there's a lot to do. It's good. It's great with friends. It's hard to complain really for what you can pay for this money. This is a lot of games. As I say, 30 hours is a lot of time to put in a game and not hit the level cap, let alone do all the activities and get to this end game, which I get the intention, depending on your craving for the grind, could last you even longer. Because we haven't even touched on the fact that you've now got a dedicated PvP modes. The Dark Zones are back, which are this weird PvPvE, which I've spent a little bit of time in, but not much. They're all back. They work in a slightly different way to they do in the first game. They're a little bit more refined. They seem good. Seem fine. Chance to get some good gear. I think I'll probably more dabble in those when I hit end game really, because I'm struggling to get through the content.
Yeah, I think all we've done with the Dark Zone at the minute is just some of the tutorials, get in there and sort of understand what to do. But we're very much focusing on the main mission side of Washington.
Yeah, and it's probably interesting to note, whereas in the first game had one big Dark Zone, this has got 3 smaller ones, each with their own different kind of theme and set in a different district. So that could be interesting. And again, you know, this is a game to play with friends, and there's this full clan support, which we haven't messed around with too much. But you need 4 people to make a clan, and it just helps with the social aspect, because they are going to introduce raids into this game as well, 8-man raids, which, depending on our Destiny experience, may or may not be a good thing. And you know, Ubisoft have got a plan for this game. They've already implemented an extra stronghold into the game, which is level 30 end game only, so I have not seen that. They've got an event going on right now which gets you lots of cosmetics. I think one of the points I hit on before and then completely trailed off on a tangent was you got your gear, but you've also got your cosmetic clothing.
Yeah.
So you can kind of look how you want and put your body armor and your backpack over the top of it. So at the moment I'm rocking a very kind of 80s Bruce Springsteen-esque denim jacket. But I've had all sorts, and you've had your tap shoes on.
Yeah, I think the first thing I unlocked was some sort of jazz shoes, and they stuck with me until I got something better, which is quite a long time actually.
Yeah, it's probably about 15-20 hours.
I think the thing with the shoes is you don't actually really see your feet very often. You sort of see from your calves upwards. So
yeah, you do,
I did forget that I had my tap shoes on.
I suppose as well the cosmetics, you can do microtransactions to get them. It's not the cheapest thing in the world. I think it's like, is it £4 or something for the base? You can buy currency in different denominations of loot box type things, and it is loot boxes. And one thing I don't like about them, loot boxes don't really bother me either way, because if you want to buy them, fine. This game does a pretty good job of doling out premium clothing anyway, so it's not the worst thing in the world. But the worst thing it does is you can get duplicates, which I think when you can pay real money for them is bullshit. You should not be able to get duplicates. Apex stopped doing that from the off. Overwatch hasn't done it for a long time because they were getting complaints. I'm pretty sure Overwatch took it out.
Did they take it out?
I'm pretty sure they did.
Because you got coins if it was a duplicate in Overwatch. So I can't remember if they changed.
I'm pretty sure they took it out. But either way, it's bullshit, and that shouldn't be in there. You should always get something new. Saying that, you can buy items directly if you don't want to go down the loot box route, and the game doles out loot box keys as you level up at a regular interval anyway. So yeah, it's not the best way to do it ever, but it's not the worst either. It's fine. Yeah. So I suppose overall, I'm enjoying The Division 2.
Yeah, same. I'm enjoying it.
It's a content-rich, really solid third-person shooter that you can play seamlessly with your friends. I mean, we talked a lot how it's co-op, but it's unbelievably easy to co-op with somebody. It just happens. When you've invited me into a game, I get the invite in The Division before the PlayStation Network even knows it's been sent.
Yeah, it's really quick.
It's really good, really solid, and coming off the back of something like Anthem, which was a fucking nightmare to play with people, it should be this easy, not the other way around. So
it doesn't have the same loading screens, but the only thing that does seem to take a while is fast travelling. I don't think it's too bad, especially not in terms of Anthem terms, but if I'm fast travelling to the White House, I do wait quite a while.
No, you're right, that initial load when you start the game is pretty long, but I would say once that initial load is finished, the only time you ever see a load is fast travelling.
Yeah. Because
effectively it is reloading the game at your destination.
Yeah, it's not too bad. But
it's not the worst, but
it does seem a bit longer than I was.
It's probably over an hour. Oh god, no, it's not over an hour. Over a minute. It's definitely over a minute. I would say it's pretty long. It's probably quicker on PC if you're using a solid state drive, or even a console with a solid state drive. But yeah, I think, well, I suppose at this current juncture, 30 hours in, 25 hours in, probably for yourself, would you recommend it?
Yeah, definitely. More so if you've got someone to play with, but even if you don't, it's a good game, and there's always things to do. The only thing I would say is, I know we've talked about it before, but when we're not playing the game, it's not something that I do think about too much. So I could happily play another game, but yeah, I am enjoying this game for what it is.
Yeah, and I completely echo those sentiments. I think this is, there's a huge amount of bang for your buck, especially if you're playing with friends. There's a shit ton to do. When you're doing it, it's really fun, There are glitches I've seen. I think you've seen more than me, and I think that there are complaints in the community that there's a lot of T-posing enemies and dead bodies.
Yeah, this morning I got a jazz player who's playing the trombone, or
The saxophone.
oh, sorry, it was a saxophone, but he was invisible, so it was a floating,
Yeah.
floating instrument.
And I've seen plenty of bodies. If you like, I've thrown a grenade into a really small room filled with about 5 or 6 enemies, and it explodes, and about 3 of them are all through the walls and stuff. And there's goofy shit like that, but I've never come across anything game breaking yet.
Yeah, it doesn't affect anything. It's just a bit like, oh, that shouldn't happen, but never mind.
I think you were saying yesterday the worst glitch is the T-posing enemies, because you see them, you react and go to shoot them, and you realise, oh, they're actually already dead. They're just T-posing.
Yeah.
And it's just goofy shit like that, and it doesn't happen all the time. It's not spoiled my enjoyment of the game.
No, no.
And it might get fixed. You'd hope it would do. It's getting patched all the time. So yeah, I think like yourself, I'm really enjoying it, but it's very disposable. It's a game that's really fun to play when you're playing it, especially with friends. But as soon as you turn it off, it kind of goes out my head. If there's anything I'm thinking about at the moment, it's probably Sekiro. And this just goes straight out the window, and I think it's maybe because it is a little bit bland. The world building's not there, the story, the hook's not there, but that doesn't matter because not everything needs to have that. The gameplay is there, and the game kind of mechanics are there, so it's fine. So yeah, I'd also really recommend it. Yeah, it's definitely the most feature-rich and competent loot shooter we've had for a while, especially upon launch.
That's it. If the T-posing's the worst they've got to fix, then they're in a pretty good position at the minute.
I mean, it should be that the bar's so low that we shouldn't really be praising them for that. They've launched a functional product. But no, it definitely builds on the good aspects of the first game. It's a lot of content. Definitely recommend it. And we're going to continue to play it, and I'm going to say that we'll probably do another video around this when we are in the end game. It'll be interesting to see if we're playing it in another month's time, because that'll be the true test.
There is quite a lot to do, and I'm not sure we've mentioned it yet, but once you hit level 30, then you come into the whole specialist
like class. It's like a
class.
Yeah, because we mentioned build diversity, but you're effectively a guy with a gun.
Yeah, so later on you get to choose out 1 out of 3 classes to specialise in. And I'm going to forget what these are, but you've got the crossbow for one of them, which is a survivalist.
Yeah, they've all got their own signature weaponry, and the survivalist has the crossbow. They've got the demolitionist, I'm going to say, who has a grenade launcher.
And there's a sniper rifle, but I can't...
I think it might be marksman or sharpshooter, I can't remember, but they're like...
Sharpshooter sounds familiar.
Yeah, they're the guys on the front cover. You can see them all.
Yeah, but again, that's something we haven't even got to yet. And
yeah, so they're like the end game builds base. They're the classes, I think, and each one gives you bonuses and all the rest of them. But I can't really go into too much deal because, as you say, we're not.
We don't know.
But it does feel like there's almost another game at the end of the campaign, and we'll come back and talk a little bit about that, and see whether we're still playing it or not when we get there, which should be soon. We're starting to crack that. We're starting to break the back of this.
We've just got a few levels to go, but yeah. We're enjoying it so far. It feels like we've done quite a lot, but there's still a lot to go.
Oh yeah, it's definitely a big mountain to climb, but enjoying it thus far.
Yeah, same.